I want to hear you out there. Let's get some noise. Montana Mott and Michael Kelsch, top 8 of the World Championships.
And in true fashion, we've got a mirror match going on. Kicking us off, Zamazenta and Chen Pao's apiece, and both of them are going to be starting to put some pressure on. Now, worth noting that neither of these Chen Pao can actually go for any sort of defensive play, so the Zamazenta are in great position to start whittling down the support options on either side of the field. But really worth noting here that the Sword of Ruin is not affecting either Chen Pao, so it will depend on the terror, it will depend on the targeting, it will depend on the heavy slams coming out from either of these Zamazentas as to whether or not we're going to start to see some KOs, or whether or not the Zamazentas want to start targeting each other down, whittle that resource away, take away the option for a wide guard so Calyrex is in the back can have a nice time later.
Nothing says mind games like the same lead apiece, but are we now going to have our first difference? As one of these Chen Paos goes for its Terror Ghost, no super effective fighting type damage can affect that slot, but now super effective dark type damage can. The responding terrestrialization heading into the Zamazenta on one of the sides of these fields. So, both of these trainers are approaching this in a slightly different way.
This is what it's all about. Our trainers just picking the moves in the moment. Let's see how it unfolds.
Icy Wind, reducing the speed over on Michal's side of the field. There is no wide guard in play, but there certainly will be potentially that all-important speed drop. Zamazenta made itself so weak to ice-type moves. The body press. Zamazenta now on Michal's side, brought down to about a fifth of its HP, but just a Ruination, consistent, halving that HP bar.
And Zamazenta going for the body press into the Chen Pao.
And it took clearly enough for the one-hit KO. There's no focus sash in contention there. Just the assault vest bolstering the special defense. But, buddy, that is a physical move.
I feel like Montana's actually got the better end of that in some ways, because the Zamazenta on Michal's side has taken so much damage. And now it's kind of tempting for Montana to start bringing in the Calyrex, but I think this bringing in the Amoonguss here is a really clever way to adapt to the situation, because it means that you can start putting on that spore pressure, start putting on the redirection pressure, and make sure this Zamazenta that's taken half of its HP in damage and is now weak to those ice-type attacks from the Chen Pao, just that little bit safer on the field. Not to say that Amoonguss is going to enjoy taking any sort of ice-type attack from the Chen Pao at the same time, so I think both of these trainers have got to carefully regulate exactly the risks they're willing to take.
Zamazenta scampering back to Michal. Now Calyrex Shadow Rider will be hitting the field in its stead. The reveal of the other Pokemon. Astral Barrage is very much online in future turns. Now the response, the body press, headed right into the Calyrex Shadow Rider, freshly switched in. That was once that Zamazenta. Ice Spinner now into the Amoonguss, super effective, brought down to about a quarter, but it's sticking around. That Rocky Helmet chip damage too. The Spore, Chen Pao, Michal's side, not able to act for the next turn.
But Michal's done really well to reposition here. Getting your Calyrex in on a turn where the opposing Calyrex is not on the field really does put you on the front foot. It does allow you to start thinking, hey, what can I do to pick up some KOs here? Now, if this was a Life Orb Calyrex, I'd be thinking that Zamazenta was a little bit in trouble in this spot. But actually, because it's carrying the Focus Sash, there's more of a chance for the Zamazenta to be able to hold on and a heavy slam to take it down to that Focus Sash. And certainly in these mirror matches, with knowing that Montana has a Calyrex in the back, if the Focus Sash gets broken on Michal's side while there's a Focus Sash still intact on Montana's side, actually, this could be the end game that Montana is looking for.
Getting that Calyrex Shadow Rider sweeping through. Now Chen Pao returning to the Ice Wren Shrine, joining the field in its stead. Dragonite, that ever so popular powerhouse Pokemon, as the Astral Barrage clatters down onto Montana's side. Amoonguss is down. Zamazenta is hanging on. The Pokemon numbers look very much in Michal's favor, but that at this stage of the game is not necessarily all said and done. The heavy slam into Calyrex Shadow Rider. It's softened up. The Focus Sash broken.
Focus Sash broken is a big deal here as the Calyrex comes in for Montana, and now it's really a question of whether or not Montana can take that comeback. Yes, they're 2 Pokemon down to 4, but that doesn't mean that they're in a bad spot at the moment. The Focus Sash is doing so much work in this spot. Maybe there's a chance that it comes down to a little bit of a speed tie between the Calyrex and Calyrex on either side of the field. But certainly if Montana gets the upper hand on that front, then the Zamazenta in combination could really do a lot of work here. Equally, Dragonite could just lock into extreme speed, knock out that Zamazenta, play a little bit defensively, and try to trade evenly until the advantage of Pokemon actually comes back to bite Montana.
No damage coming into Michelle's Calyrex this turn, but there certainly will be a big Astral Barrage now clattering down from the skies into Michelle's Dragonite. It's in a focus, it's not multi-scale, it's going to be taking a decent chunk there. My goodness,
Slam.
The health bar's looking similar. Heavy Slam, Dragonite brought down low, but it's not enough for the KO. The Outrage locking into that move, and you cannot choose where it targets, means that the Calyrex's Focus Sash is broken.
But you win either way here if you're Michelle on that trade. Yes, the Dragonite cannot switch out anymore, but it has managed to break the Focus Sash onto the Calyrex, and where you've got a few more resources, Montana really just has to capitalize on the fact that their Calyrex could go first in this position and put all their eggs in that basket where Michelle, even if they don't win the speed tie, has the opportunity to come back with their Pokemon in the back. Certainly a Sucker Punch on the Chien-Pao's looking pretty spicy right about now, if it can wake up in time.
And that is a big if, snoozing away in its Pokeball. Montana is going to win that potential speed tie here. That will be Calyrex Shadow Rider down. That will be Dragonite down. We are just down now to our Chien-Pao and our Zamazenta in the back. It's a double KO.
And you can see both players exchanging some smiles, knowing that that was what this game came down to. Both of them playing so well, and sometimes these are the chances that you have to take. A Heavy Slam follow-up, of course, doesn't do anything in this spot, but does cover the switch in for the Calyrex if Michelle had decided to switch it out and not risk the speed tie.
Zamazenta once more reducing the defenses of everything on the field, and now we have mind games aplenty here. Does Michelle Zamazenta go for the wide guard, blocking the Astral Barrage? When will Chien-Pao wake up? Will it be going for the Sucker Punch? Does Montana attack as a result of that?
I think Montana goes for the attacks here because I think the Chien-Pao, and I might have missed this, but I think the Chien-Pao has not yet taken a turn of sleep. It's mandatory turn of sleep, let's be clear here. So if that's the case, then it's in Michelle's best interest to play defensively with the Zamazenta there, not let it go down this turn. Give Sucker Punch a chance. If that Chien-Pao is able to survive a Heavy Slam in this spot, then it's all to play for here.
The Psychic into Michelle Zamazenta. No Astral Barrage to speak of. Could have been a really nice way for Montana to get on top. The Heavy Slam, the Chien-Pao brought down so low. It needs to set its alarm soon, because if not, it's going to be snoozing all the way into Montana taking this game.
Worth noting as well, there is the Ice Shard onto the Chien-Pao as well that could knock out this Calyrex in one. Let alone the Zamazenta actually being Terra Dragon. It's probably within range of that too. And so Michelle does have options for the Ice Shard or the Sucker Punch. Doesn't matter which one goes into the Calyrex as long as one lands. But the Zamazenta on Montana's side does have some advantage here because it did go first against Michelle Zamazenta in the early game. But whether or not that's an indication, oh, it's a wake up!
Michelle Chien-Pao wakes up and he gets that Ice Shard off. That's going to be Montana's Calyrex Shadow Rider down. That was the turn Michelle needed that wake. That was the turn that might have just stamped their ticket through to game 2 with a win. The body press, it's a double KO. Michelle Kelsch with the Midas touch has just turned that win into gold. One more game stands between them and progressing through to top 4. They can barely believe it, but they're keeping their heads strong and in that game. The reads, everything that was going on there, the calls that these trainers had to get right. It went Michelle's way that game, but is it going to Montana's in the next?
This is one of the things that I respect so much about Michelle Kelsch as a player. Even though that was absolutely clutch what happened, you can see how well composed he is in this moment. Nothing is on his mind right now other than the match in front of him, and I think that's the right attitude to have in that scenario. Now, we know in these sort of mirror matches that it can come down to those reads in the moment, those small turns, and I think Montana played it so well to give themselves the best opportunity for success. But it was that early terrestrialization, I think, onto the Chien-Pao that really made that difference in the end game.
These Astral Barrage mind games, these focus sashes being broken, the fact that Dragonite locked into the Outrage into Montana's Calyrex Shadow Rider as opposed to the other target, this celebration when Chien-Pao was waking up. I mean, there was so much there that might not have gone in Michelle's direction, but Outrage was so nice to lock into because if you don't target the Calyrex, then you just get super effective damage into the Terra Dragon Zamazenta on Montana's side of the field. But Ben, is there anything Montana can do to try and make a win for them slightly more guaranteed? Is there anything they can do to strip away all of those chance elements?
So I think it's going to be hard to get away from it completely, especially actually thinking about it. The Icy Wind coming off onto the Zamazenta in the early game made the Zamazenta go slower against Montana's first time round, but actually second time round it looked like Michelle's actually was outspeeding, so that's definitely something that both players are going to need to take into this match as we get another Zamazenta on the field, Calyrex and Amoonguss with them.
Game 2 between Montana Mott and Michelle Kelsch in our top 8 here. Now, with the Zamazenta staring each other down, there's no Chien-Pao on the field this time around. There's no defenses being dropped. We have Wine Guard mind games aplenty. Amoonguss could well be shutting us lot down immediately with sleep.
It certainly could be. I mean, this is the other difficulty here, though, is that Calyrex actually is putting a lot of pressure onto this Amoonguss, and a double up with Calyrex's Psychic and Zamazenta's Body Press, depending if it goes for Terra or it doesn't, really does make this quite difficult for an Amoonguss to get something done. But of course, that's the read that you make in these spots. I mean, if the Amoonguss just goes for a Protect, then you can launch those attacks into it, and they're all for nothing.
Protect, of course, meaning that it would be completely safe from damage. It's so weak to those Psychics, and the Terrestrialization is going to be targeted into Zamazenta here. On one of these trainers is become that Terra Dragon, and the Pokemon of choice was for Michelle there. Now Calyrex Shadow Rider will be scouting out from behind that Protect shield. Zamazenta 2, just to see what Michelle has locked into here. The Amoonguss and the Zamazenta. Amoonguss also going for this Protect. This means that on the next turn, that option has been spent. So much less likely to work heading into this next turn of our top 8.
Not only that, but the Encore on this Calyrex could really pay a lot of dividends here, where if you go for the Encore into the Amoonguss, then the Amoonguss is just stuck on the field going for Protect, and that's not particularly nice. You can get away around that if you're Michelle by just going for the Rage Powder this turn. I think that's why Michelle was probably comfortable to do that, because just redirecting attacks away from the Zamazenta usually works out in your favor overall, and certainly with the Terra Fire on that Amoonguss, actually against the Zamazenta it's looking pretty good overall. Certainly not going to take too much damage, or certainly not necessarily going to be in KO range from a combination of attacks here.
Time for the responding Terrestrialization over on Montana's side, and it will be that Terra Dragon Zamazenta once more. This dog's bark has just turned into a roar. Now, Psychic, super effective, into the Amoonguss from Michelle. How much damage? Just enough for the big one-hit KO. Amoonguss down.
That's a big KO there for Montana. The special attack rising from that Grim Neigh, and Calyrex looks in a perfect position to go on the offensive, but taking that Behemoth Bash means its Focus Sash is now not intact anymore.
A critical hit, Heavy Slam, just for a little bit of extra damage. Wonderful to see Montana enjoying themselves so much on the stage now. The pressure could not be greater, but they are remembering that we are playing a game that is intended for fun, even when the stakes are high. This friendly rivalry on the stage here between Michelle and Montana. Now Michelle deciding what they can bring in from the back.
And yeah, I think Michelle's in a great spot to just start thinking about bringing the Calyrex in this situation. But they've both got the Zamazentas if Michelle decides to choose for that next to them, which offers the Wide Guard, which stops the Astral Barrages, and then it makes Psychic not actually that effective against the opposing Calyrexes. So I like Michelle's decision to bring in the Chien-Pao here, especially after Zamazenta on Montana's side has committed their Terror. The Sucker Punch looks very, very threatening onto the Calyrex on Montana's side. And I think that's something that Montana's going to have to think very hard about how they navigate. Equally, there's no Terra Ghost on this Chien-Pao this time round, and the Chien-Pao cannot play defensively whatsoever. So the Calyrex does get the opportunity to play on the defensive this turn, and Montana can just choose to launch a body press into the Calyrex, but I do wonder if there's a little bit of a bait going on, whether the Calyrex can switch in on Mishal's side and then take nothing from the body press, get that in for free while you start whittling down even more of the health on Montana's side.
Terror options for both of these trainers spent, of course, on the Zamazenta. There's going to be no switches. It's going to be the Ruination from Chien Pao, meaning that this bulky dog has had its HP bar halved. Now Zamazenta is channeling all of that steel-type energy, and it was heading right for the Calyrex, but of course taking no damage through its Protect. The responding heavy slam, super effective, enough also for the one-hit KO onto Mishal's Chien Pao, already brought down to their final 2 Pokemon.
Not just getting the KO here, but covering a switch from that Calyrex that's very likely in the back, and there it is on the field. Its Focus Sash intact. Both of our wide guarders with a lot of HP left remaining, but I think Mishal is conditioned for this game state where the Calyrex can take at least one more attack. If Mishal knows that the Zamazenta on his side is just that little bit faster, a double target into the Zamazenta on Montana's side could seal this game up, could seal his potential to go into top 4 for the 3rd time in a row.
The mind games are aplenty here as Zamazenta goes for the wide guard. Mishal, hands clasped together. What is it they're praying for? The Psychic targeted into Mishal's Calyrex Shadow Rider. That Focus Sash broken. The Encore. Now Montana's Calyrex will have to keep going for that Psychic for a few turns. Turning our attention to the Zamazenta for Mishal. The body press just tickling Montana's here. It's brought down low, but not low enough.
Now there's some decisions to make here, but I think Montana is in a great spot to do a lot of work, because now it's the opposite of what we had in our game 1, where actually Montana's got 2 more Pokemon in the back, and those Pokemon have yet to be utilized whatsoever. If that's the Chien Pao that's in the back for Montana, actually there's quite a lot of potential here for Montana to take us to a game 3.
Zamazenta will just be keeping itself this turn. As this mirror match plays out across the field, the wide guard over on Montana's side. What has Calyrex locked into for Mishal? The Psychic from Montana into the Zamazenta, and now Mishal's Calyrex Shadow Rider having gone for the Psychic into Zamazenta. Is this going to be enough to claim the KO? Yes, it certainly is. Montana has finally, in this game 2, lost a Pokemon.
It seems like the Encore's doing a lot of work in this situation where actually, because Montana has is now locked into Psychic for a little bit, you don't have to wide guard, because you know that there is no potential whatsoever to take an Astral Barrage until the Encore wears off. That's going to be after this turn coming up. Now Chien Pao enters the fray, and this is the same situation that we had just a moment ago, where the Zamazenta on Mishal's side is looking pretty good to be able to knock that out, but not necessarily before this Chien Pao can launch out a Sucker Punch to be able to knock out the Calyrex. Now, both of these players have been in this situation before. The obvious play is the Sucker Punch, but that doesn't mean that that's what's coming out. And you've got to read a level and a level and a level above in these sort of high-intensity matches. It's not as straightforward as what it looks like right now.
Mishal's Calyrex will just be scouting out, going for its Protect. Any Sucker Punch into that slot, of course, will be failing. Montana goes for its last Encored Psychic into Mishal's Zamazenta there. There's no critical hit, but it's good damage. Now the Ice Spinner, super effective into Mishal's Zamazenta. It is down and out. It's just going to be Mishal's Calyrex Shadow Rider against the world.
And this looks like Montana maybe a few turns away, or even just one turn away from taking us into a game 3. Having a bit of a trouble in game 1, not figuring out the matchup as well. Mishal cancels that game. Montana takes game 2. We're going to be going to a game 3. One of these trainers working so hard to lock their way into top 4. Can Mishal do it again, or is Montana going to knock Mishal out of contention to be our next world champion?
It could go either way in this next game. It is essentially all come down to a best of 1. Montana adapting so well, and it felt like, Ben, that they did indeed find a way to be able to make this slightly less positional, slightly less mind-gamey. And you could argue even that the Encore coming out from Mishal's side was sort of, it gave them information. It meant that they were locked into a move. It almost made the battle slightly easier in that sense.
Definitely more predictable overall, and certainly that does help both trainers in some way, but I think it definitely favored Montana, where they were just more ready to be able to go on the offensive because that Chien Pao had been knocked out early. And I think that's probably one of the keys to this matchup, where Montana lost game 1 when the Chen Pao went down turn 1, and Mishael won game 2. The other way round.
Yes. It's game 3, trainers. The final matchup between Montana and Mishael here. This game decides who's progressing to our top 4 at the World Championships. And this time around, Zamazenta and Chien Pao for Montana, Chien Pao and Calyrex Shadow Rider for Mishael.
Mishael trying to catch out that Calyrex that led in game 2, I think, and try to get the upper hand there. But Montana actually taking a slightly different approach, going back to what didn't work in game 1 with that Zamazenta and Chien Pao lead, but actually that seems to favor Montana a little bit more in this situation because that Chien Pao on Mishael's side is under so much pressure, and that's why it's scampering back to its Pokeball.
No more Chien Pao for Mishael, instead the Amoonguss. That mushroom that was putting in so much work throughout this set. Now Mishael's Calyrex Shadow Rider will be hiding behind its Protect. The Icy Wind, super effective into the Amoonguss. The speed drop doesn't matter here. It's such a slow Pokemon as it is. Connecting down, every little bit of chip counts. You can, of course, regenerate to switch that away. Just the body press as well is still really, really great damage into that Pokemon. You can see the dividends that the Dauntless Shield defense boost pays.
But now this Calyrex is going to have a little bit of a tough time trying to dish out damage to an Assault Vest Chien Pao. Only the Astral Barrage is going to do anything, and that can be both blocked by the Wide Guard, but also blocked by the Dark typing. There's no actual reason for Montana to go for one of their Terrors in this spot. They can hold it for a little bit later on in the match. And now that Amoonguss taking so much damage on the switch-in, you can see what Mishael's going for, taking the body press, trying to get into a position where they can redirect attacks, or certainly a Sucker Punch, away from the Calyrex and start making some ground. But I think that Icy Wind onto the Chien Pao is just so oppressive here in this matchup.
Zamazenta has to do an encore now. It's coming out much sooner than it did in the previous game. Amoonguss is slowly but surely working its way all the way back to Unova and off the field now. Zamazenta goes for its body press once more into that Amoonguss slot, of course, thanks to the encore. And now Amoonguss is down and out. There's not going to be any pesky Rage Powder, not going to be any pesky Spores coming out over on Mishael's side of the field for the remainder of this game.
I can kind of see what Mishael is going for in that spot. Actually locking the Zamazenta into body press does 2 things. First, it means that it's not going to be wide guarding anymore, but the second is that it can't now lock into Heavy Slam. And if this Terra Ghost Chien Pao from Mishael comes back in, then maybe that's a slight ticket to be able to deal a little bit more confidently with this game state where Montana's Zamazenta is just putting so much pressure onto really anything that Mishael could have in the back, whether it's their own Zamazenta or, of course, that Chien Pao. And I think going back to game 1 that Mishael won, the Terra Ghost on the Chien Pao was actually something that did really do quite a lot of work for them.
Zamazenta now has joined that field. The defense boost meaning that body press is going to have its blow softened somewhat, but of course it is still super effective. In the previous 2 games, we saw those terrestrializations so early, but they have not been used yet in this one. Both trainers are going to want to be preserving that little bit of extra information for when it matters the most, but Montana's considering it on their Zamazenta here.
It seems like definitely worth considering in this spot. You don't want to take a super effective Heavy Slam if you can avoid it. I think the most important thing is that the Icy Wind went off onto that Calyrex, and so it being a Terra Ghost is actually really useful for Mishael here for not having to worry about the Zamazenta. But equally, it just means that it's always going to be susceptible to a Sucker Punch if it stays on the field.
Zamazenta now has finally gone for its Terra Dragon once more, which worked out so well for Montana in the previous game. Let's see if it will do so again. Zamazenta is keeping itself safe from damage. What is going to befall now this Calyrex Shadow Rider? The Sucker Punch is double super effective. That's Mishael's Calyrex Shadow Rider returned to the stables. It all comes down to that dog and that cat, the Chien Pao and that Zamazenta. No damage now taken. My goodness gracious me, has Montana just made the play that has stamped their ticket through to top 4?
That's such a difficult call to make at this stage of the event. All of our trainers here are so well versed in these matchups and the mind games that go alongside it. It's so difficult to dig deep at this late stage of the tournament, but Montana looks like they are just a few turns away from potentially taking it all here. If the Chien Pao or the Zamazenta on Mishael's side of the field go for one of their Terrors, then Montana's not going to be doing as much damage, but it does mean that the other one is going to be weak to the body press that Montana Zamazenta has been locked into. And with a guaranteed Chen Pao on the field until either Michail's is knocked out and or Montana's is knocked out, those body presses are going to be stacking up.
Michail is now going for that terrestrialization, the target of choice, their own Zamazenta. Once more that dragon typing, meaning it's no longer taking super effective damage from Montana's Zamazenta's body press here. That bark of victory, will it be a bark of glory? The icy wind, dropping the speeds of both, dropping the HP bars of both a little bit, crucially connecting, not always going to happen here. Super effective on the Zamazenta, chipping away. Montana Zamazenta going for that body press, taking so much better. Now Ice Spinner, super effective. Michail once more with the hands clasped. Zamazenta, though, is going to be hanging on, no critical hit. The body press, enough for the one-hit KO, of course, onto the Chen Pao that is so weak to those fighting moves.
It makes so much sense for Montana to target down the Zamazenta with that body press as well, because you don't know whether or not you're going to actually land a body press on the Chen Pao, so better to play it a little bit safer, but also to get that icy wind off. If the Zamazenta does in fact go for a wide guard to block an icy wind, then it's not going for a body press and your Chen Pao stays on the field. You can start targeting things down. Now, after the icy wind, the Zamazenta with its defense boost is easily going to be able to pick up a knockout onto Chen Pao on Michail's side of the field, and only a critical hit sucker punch, I think, would be enough to make this, or even the ice shard there.
Not going to happen, just going all in on that immediate KO, the ice shard, and Montana Zamazenta hanging on. That might have been the last chance saloon for Michail there. The double super effective body press into Chen Pao. It's down. It's now just this Zamazenta that could be returning to Galar. The Behemoth Bash, steel type damage, a critical hit to boot, but it looks like Montana just has the resources necessary to secure the game. Michail puts their controller down. They